Dad's army was part of a very particular part of history.
I mean, you couldn't get a bigger situation than that. World War.
On sea and air, the struggle continues to win back our civilization. While our army continues to fight with all the gallantry of our great tradition, let us not forget the citizens who come home after a hard day's work and then go on parade as local defense volunteers.
Squad, shut! Stand at ease. Squad, shut! I think it would save time, sir, if we were just to settle for that.
And there was us silly old idiots trying to do our bit in it. I mean, it was a huge situation.
Don't threaten me, you silly old fool.
You!
Because it was true. I mean, the whole might of Hitler's army, and then down in Mornington see these little old chaps saying,
After I've finished work and having me cup of tea, I take my assegai out and sharpen it up a bit, and then I'm coming on down to parade, and I think they're going to give me a rifle tonight. But there never is. There never is. No.
Our first casualty, Wilson.
It showed Britain's finest hour. And people have forgotten about that, and it was our finest hour, because we were on our own. Huge masses of Germans across the Channel, and there's going to be no mercy.
We're very slow to rouse in this country. We don't like wars and bloodshed. But once we knuckle down to it, we fight better than anybody else in the world.
They would have stood up and been counted in the most horrible way.
The BBC had doubts about the sensibility of doing a comedy show about England's finest hour, and that was at a very senior level, and I think Bill Cotton ultimately overcame that argument, and we went ahead.
Mr. Brown goes off to town on the A21, but he comes home each evening and he's ready with his gun. So who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler, if you think old England's done?
When Britain is in danger, when trouble's in the air, we all forget our squabbles, its trespassers beware. The nation is united when danger looms in sight. We march along together and sing with all our might. We must all stick together, and the clouds will soon roll by. We must all stick together, never mind the old school tie.
Dad's army was born out of desperation. I was a ragged-arsed actor, and I used to work for David Croft occasionally in a series called Hugh and I. And I was getting a bit desperate because I was in all these sitcoms playing small parts, rotten parts, you know, just racking your brains, just a few pages to try and make it different. And one day I was working for the great Joan Littlewood, you may have heard, at Theatre Workshop, my mentor. And I was sitting in the train, I thought, I've got to do something. I can't go on like this. I must think of something. I know what. I said, I'll write a television situation comedy, bearing in mind that at the Theatre Workshop, we wrote the stuff ourselves.
I think at one time when he was going past Buckingham Palace in a taxi, he suddenly thought, once upon a time during the war, the Dad's army, the Home Guard, actually guarded outside the Buckingham Palace. And after that he thought, what a marvellous idea for a situation comedy.
And I thought service things are always interesting. And I've been in the war. I was a boy of 16 in the Home Guard. And suddenly I thought, I'll write something about the Home Guard. And I started to do some research, and everybody had forgotten about it.
I liked the idea enormously, and I took it straight away to Michael Mills, who was the head of comedy then, and he was a wonderful head of comedy. Anything was possible with him, and he saw the potential straight away. And he said, well, Jimmy's obviously hasn't written for television before, why don't you both collaborate? And so we did.
When David and I first started working together, we worked entirely differently than later on.
We had a strange way of working. We used to get together and sort of set the world to rights for about 20 minutes, and then we would spend a couple of days, I think, probably devising two episodes.
We would sit down and we would work out a plot and do about 10 pages of notes. And then we'd do another one, so we had 2 plots.
And then Jimmy would go away and write one, and I would write the other. And so, of the 80 programmes, he wrote 40 and I wrote 40.
We always thought that we could tell which were Jimmy's scripts and which were David's, and not in any derogatory sense at all. Jimmy was just ideas flowing out of every orifice, you know, and the stories would go in probably 10 directions, and David would come along and just go, we'll bring them in a bit there.
And it's a good way of working, actually, because we became sort of responsible for our own output, in a way, and you get pride in what you do, and every line that you write, you see appear on the screen, which is as opposed to the American system, where everybody rewrites everything, and you never get, no author ever sees his work appear on the screen, really.
David Croft and Jimmy Perry was almost as much a double act, say, as Arthur Lowe and John the Measurer, Mannering and Wilson. The 2 different ones. There was Jimmy, big, loud, brash, wondering what new suit he would buy as we got another series commissioned and so on. And David, quiet, sort of enigmatic smile.
They were wonderful together, and David used to sort of direct us and all that.
You'd try something new, look at David, and he'd try a new reading on a line, throw in a different line, and look to see what his reaction is, and go. Or, yes, you knew. And if you went, didn't bother anymore. No, you wouldn't go and push it. On 1 or 2 occasions, yes, you would, when you really believed in something. But he was an absolute joy to work with.
Jimmy was there on the floor, and he was very strict, you know, because I went away with my late husband, Bill Fraser, and when we came back, I'd lost Mrs. Fox.
She's awfully good to me, Mrs.
Yes, I'm sure she is. Do sit down.
I do the odd 100, and then I make him a nice cup of tea and things.
And I was trying to be somebody else. And suddenly Jimmy came to me in rehearsal and he said, "What do you think you're doing?" So I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "You're like some terrible comedy woman playing this part." He said, "Be yourself." That's what I said. "Well, Jimmy, I've lost it." He said, "You're trying too hard. Just be yourself."
No, you take Mr. Jones for granted. Too much, all of you.
And he was right, but he let me know in no uncertain terms, do you know?
Well, one of the things David often does in the shooting of it is to focus not on the person who's talking, but on the person who's reacting to it.
So somebody does something, and then you've got 5 or 6 different characters to put the camera on to see their reaction.
And each person gets 5 minutes alone with me.
He says he wants to speak to somebody called Po-Face.
Captain Mannering, shall I make wind?
And there was one particular reaction shot with me which I begged him not to do. I'm afraid I'm going to mention it. Whistle while you work, Hitler is a twerp.
Whistle while you work, Hitler is a twerp. He's half army, so's his army. Whistle while you...
Your name will also go on the list. What is it?
Don't tell him, Pike.
Pike.
And I pleaded with David, please don't come to me for a reaction, because I'm laughing. You know, after 6 days rehearsal, I'm sitting up there with the Tommy gun at the top of the, you know, looking over the tops of the flats. Surely you're shooting off. You can't. You can't take a reaction. I can't keep my face straight, David. It's funny. Where else can I go? Come on. I can't go to anybody else for a reaction. I've got to come to you. And I'm afraid you do see me on top of that ladder. Your name will also go on the list. What is it? Don't tell him, Pike. And he comes to me, and I'm biting the inside of my left cheek, trying not to laugh.
People say, why is that line funny? Well, it doesn't appear out of nowhere. You see, it's built up from earlier in the programme, you know, when they realise they've got to look after us until the army arrive in the morning.
Now, Patrick!
Oh, I say, they're awfully well disciplined, aren't they, sir?
Nothing of the sort. Just slavish, blind obedience.
And this is the start of the build-up. He doesn't like me anyway because I'm arrogant.
Oh, look here.
I am making notes, Captain. And your name will go on the list. And when we win the war, you will be brought to account.
You write what you like. You're not going to win this war.
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, no, you're not.
Oh, yes, we are.
But there is a secret fear there, and it's personified in Pike when he says, after he regrets singing that song. And so he says to John Lemez, he says, Uncle, he says...
Well, it's not fair my name going on the list. I was only joking.
You really must try and be more careful. You must realise by now that the Germans have absolutely no sense of humour.
And he voices his fears about the possibility that if Hitler does win the war, will Hitler take much notice of the fact I've written his name down on that list? You see, it's perceptive in that way because there was a fear there, you know.
His breathing's all right. How's the pulse?
No one is moving!
I was exceptionally lucky to be in that one. It was great, that.
We must all stick together, birds of a feather, and the clouds will soon roll by.
Are they here yet? What? The rifles! Well, what do you think? We're living on promises, aren't we, Mr. Fraser?
Well, I'm not marching through the streets anymore with this thing. I was full of Bergana kids and they kept shouting, "Hi, mister, can we borrow your toasting fork?"
Right, one of them offered to lend me his little toy cat pistol.
Yes, he offered me the same. I took it.
Thank you very much.
News of the rifles, sir?
No, I'm afraid not. Message from GHQ to say that we are no longer to be known as the local defence volunteers. From now on, we're the Home Guard.
Oh, I see. That sounds rather nice, doesn't it, sir?
Oh, yes, I'm sure it'll frighten the Germans to death. To know that they've now got to deal with an unarmed pack of Home Guards instead of an unarmed pack of local defence volunteers. Tell them I'll be out in a minute.
All right, sir.
He was always late. I had a little beetle in those days, and I used to take him to location, and David would be ahead on location, working out the camera shots. They were setting up the lights, they were setting up everything, and I always used to bring Arthur along, wait for him. And he was always late every morning, and he'd come running out of the hotel, buttoning on his belt with a revolver, which, just a little story there, he didn't have a heavy revolver. They bought him a Roy Rogers Special and painted it black and stuck it in, because he says, far too heavy, I couldn't have that thing.
All those breakfasts, I mean, he was an extraordinary bloke, because food was a great thing with him, you know, and, it was nonsense what he used to do in the mornings.
When we went to Thetford, you know, at hotel, he always got up, he had the kippers or something before he'd go to work, and unless he got the kippers, he didn't want to go, and, you know, he was very precise in things.
You'd say to him, Arthur, you're first on, you know, this morning, and the coach is leaving at 8 o'clock. Don't worry about all that sort of thing. Just call the waiter over and say, you know, I got to put a ham off the bone, don't want that plastic stuff. There's all this argument going on. The poor assistant producer, whether it was Harold Snow or somebody after that, would say, Arthur, we're due out in 5 minutes. Right about all that. And I want crispy toast and one tea bag in the pot.
But David said, look, Jimmy, can't you get him here any earlier? Try and get him here earlier. And I said, Arthur, why are you always late? He said, you know, this early morning filming plays havoc with my lavatorial arrangements. I said, listen, try all bran. He said, I wouldn't eat that muck. He says, like mattress stuffing. I said, try. Now, in those days, this is 30-odd years ago, more than that, hotels they all do little packets. But I used to buy my own all bran and take it with me for breakfast. And I say to the waiter, I said to the waiter, take this over to Mr. Lowe every morning. And after about 3 days, he came skipping out of the hotel. I said, all right, Arthur, this is wonderful. Wonderful, you know, all bran has totally changed my life.
Typical English summer, isn't it? What the hell do you want? Oh, and happy Christmas to you, too. Look, do you mind not dripping all over my Part 2 or the floors?
The air raid warden was a very important character.
Oh, just what are you doing here?
Yeah. You were shown a light upstairs.
It was very important to have an antagonist who actually didn't have any authority.
I want to see this here. Can I be an umpire, Colonel? I mean, I'm civil defence. I won't be biased, will I?
Because he had a senior officer they were bound to take notice of what he said, really.
What are you talking about? This is an ARP matter. You shouldn't be here at all. Clear out.
How dare you? This is my bank and I'm responsible for the money in it. Are you going or not?
No.
All right. Now get out.
So the fact that his antagonist was the warden was very useful from the writing point of view.
Here! What's all this I heard about you one in the hall on Wednesday? God blimey, what's going on here? Old folks' clinic?
Don't get on with it.
Don't you start, Mannering.
I was a warden myself, but I was not a warden like... I was too young, I was about 17 or 18, but I was not a warden like Bill Pertwee.
I just heard Captain Henry say he's determined to get my note oranges.
Well, he's not going to. I'll see to that.
And I got this call from David Croft, who said, Bill, do you remember me? He said, you were in a show of mine called Hugh and I, and he said, you played the part of a, well, it was really an extra, in a cinema queue. And he said, you pushed Terry Scott out of the way and said, oi, get out of it. He said, I thought perhaps you'd be rather good as an air raid warden in a programme we're going to do.
And the same to you. What's going on here?
You can't come in, you mustn't make noises.
Mostly I've been in varieties. I'd done quite a lot of radio with 2 lovely shows, Beyond I Can, Around the Horn and so forth, but I hadn't really done any sort of what I call straight stuff. It'd always been, you know, End of the Pier or whatever it might have been. Lovely. I mean, you know, people love that sort of entertainment, and so did I. But suddenly I was into a new ball game.
Walk up, ladies and gentlemen, and see my lovely oranges. I shall be auctioning them off at 4:30. Walk up.
You know, that man Hodges makes the whole thing sound like a fairground.
I said dreadfully common. He shouldn't be allowed in public places at all.
And Arthur Lowe would never take somebody on one side and sort of secretly say something about an artist, which is whatever it was. And he said in front of me, he said to David Croft, he said, where do you get this fella from? David said, well, he comes from the, well, he's been in the music halls and he's been in Bryce summer shows. Yeah, probably matures and comes along. He was sort of, you know, he wasn't very sure. Then we became great friends. Arthur and I, enormous. We used to go out to his boat together.
Don't get in that boat, Captain Square. I'll pull the plug out. You damn fool! What do you want to do that for?
Well, Mannering's lot were winning it. I tried to stop them.
What?
I did it for you, sir. Did it for you, sir.
Slithering idiot! Ah, look, there's another boat on that bank over there. Row over in that dinghy and get it.
Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir. Of course, sir. Certainly, sir.
Bill Pertwee was the unfortunate one who got chucked into the river every time.
They'd put some holes in the boat, and I had to turn the boat over literally by rocking because the holes weren't getting enough water in the boat. So I started it, and the boat turned upside down, and I was underneath the boat, and the water came up underneath it and brought the strap of the helmet up. So it was like this. But I came out and I was waving. I was, oi, 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 oi. You know, there was about 2 people left of the whole crew there. They'd gone off to another location.
You can't do it these days. You're not allowed to go into the river unless you've wetsuits on and pills. And there's a thing called Wild's disease, I understand, which is rats perpetrate all over the place. I've never heard of anybody who ever had it, but it's one of those sort of myths that one has to take care of because of the health and safety people.
I've formed a very affectionate bond with most rivers in Norfolk and Suffolk, where I now live, and I do pass several rivers with my daily routine and go, I know you well, yes.
We used to concentrate really on the fit ones. It came to sort of pushing them in the water. We never pushed Godfrey into the water, for instance. You know, would have probably been fatal.
Would you care for a cucumber sandwich?
Oh, yes, very nice. Tough. Oh, really lovely.
I say, how delicious. I'd worked for David Croft before, and I knew Jimmy Perry when he and his wife were running the Repertory Theatre at Watford, so when the part of the vicar came up, Jimmy, I think, thought of me, and I got the call to go and do what I thought was just going to be a one-off, one episode.
May I ask what you're doing here? Me? I'm looking out of the window, sir. Well, why have you got that hose attached to my gas fire? Ah, well, you see, it's like this. You see your big gas bag yonder?
Yes.
Well, we didn't know what to do with it, so we thought it would just fill up your gas fire.
Ah, most charitable, my friend. Most charitable. Well, gradually the vicar became a sort of more regular character, and so by the time the thing ended, I was in, I think, every episode of the last series.
The Virgin and I will be umpires as well, and the fact that you've only bought me a single scotch will have no effect on my judgment whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention for a moment, please? Now, may I first of all welcome you to our winter bazaar, and here to perform the opening ceremony is our popular town clerk, Mr. Gordon.
Go and fetch the broom, they're opening. Oh, right. Good afternoon, citizens of Warmington-on-Sea. The BBC wanted me to play the part of town clerk in Dad's Army, and I thought it was Jimmy Perry who'd recommended me for the part. And I've told this tale for some time, until last year when Jimmy caught up with me and said, no, he said, it wasn't me. I didn't recommend you for the part, so I don't know how it was. But here I am today as town clerk, thanks to somebody.
As town clerk, I feel sure we're all most happy to have Captain Mannering as chairman.
As the manager of the local bank, and I as the chief executive on the town council, we were evens. I mean, we looked down on everybody else, really. I mean, we put up with these various other people, but in the meetings where we had the town meetings and so forth, we were equals.
Mr. Town Clerk, do I understand that one of these girls is going to ride naked through the streets of Warmington?
Yes, it's a tribute to the brave city of Coventry. The girl won't be bare, of course. She'll wear fleshings.
Fleshings?
And these days, when people come out and ask me for an autograph, they say, will you say fleshings?
I suggest that Lady Godiva should be Mrs. Fox. Quiet, please, quiet! Mrs. Fox will be perfectly respectable, covered from top to toe in fleshings, and wearing a wig of long golden tresses.
You'd never cover her up with long golden tresses.
Later on, Pike interceded and repeated my words.
Fleshings.
With even more expression, fleshings, which got the audience absolutely,
Pompous idiot. But at least he was brief.
And of course, there was a similarity between the town clerk and Captain Mannering. We were both rather pompous gentlemen.
How dare you?
So sorry. I beg your pardon.
Sorry. What's the matter with him? Well, he's obviously tiddly. Tiddly?
The secret of playing drunk is not to be drunk, is to try to control your drunkenness. That's the whole secret.
Is this the party?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Could you tell me your name, please?
Mannering. Barry Mannering. Jukes and carnival novelty.
I was in My Brother and I, and it was the most wonderful episode because it gave Arthur the chance to do two parts.
You must be Captain Mannering's brother. How very nice to meet you.
Oh, it is a fancy jest. You've come as a vicar. Your colour's the wrong way round. Never mind. Have an exploding cigar.
And the contrast between the very pompous, rather proper Captain Mannering and his rather dissolute brother is absolutely brilliant.
Yourself. I should have thought 5:30 in the afternoon was a bit early, even for you. Poor face.
I've never seen such a good drunk. He really was smashing.
Look at you. Swirled umbrella, striped trousers, pot hat. Because you've got on, haven't you?
Yes, he played that awful character who was his brother beautifully. Very complicated show to do, and of course he had to do it to the bare wall as often as not, and play those scenes where they were both in it. It was technically quite difficult, particularly in those days.
Look, you'd better come to the point. I have an important affair to see to at 7:30. An important affair? Is she blonde? How dare you?
It's a sherry party for senior officers and civic dignitaries.
Don't get drunk.
Runs in the family. It certainly does not.
And it was a lovely character. We should have done another show with that. I think that brother should have appeared again.
Tonight's panel is made up from that popular television series Dad's Army, which is about the Home Guard. But were any of the panel actually in the Home Guard?
Me?
John Laurie, you were. What rank were you?
Oh, very, very private.
You were?
Terribly private. I was one of those with a brush and, you know, broomstick. I did all that. It was rather embarrassing because I lived in rather a posh part of London, Westbourne Terrace. And it was... I felt it was a little derogatory for a man who had played all the magnificent parts I'd played to be walking about with a broomstick, especially as I'd walked about with a rifle some years earlier, in the First War.
Yes.
Thank you.
Arthur, what were you doing in wartime? Arthur Lowe.
No, I was in the army. I was a soldier.
You were. Did you have what experiences stand out to you of your army service then?
Oh, dear. I don't know. I was in the army for 7 years altogether. And I suppose the most outstanding thing that happened was when I was demobbed.
Very good. John Lemessurier, what were you doing in...
What was I doing?
Yeah.
Well,
smuggling.
I received my calling out papers, and then my house was bombed. I had a little house in Chelsea, and that disappeared one afternoon at about 3 o'clock. I was rehearsing at the time, and I came back. It was another rather boring bomb story, and everything had gone, including my calling out papers. So I went into the army when I thought I might go. You know, I might say a short term, and, I arrived on a saucer plane with a bag of golf clubs in the taxi, and they thought rather curious things about me when I arrived, and what's this we've got now? You know, they thought that kind of thing. And so that was about 1940. And then they had to do something with me. They obviously couldn't make me a sergeant or a corporal or anything like that, so they had to try and make me an officer, so they sent me to try and become an officer, and that's what I did. Rather reluctantly, but I did.
Bill Pertwee.
Now, I was in the ATC for... Yeah, I was.
Where were you?
Yes, I was, yes. I joined up a fortnight before the war finished and got out a fortnight afterwards.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the most wonderful set of characters because he assembled, David and Jimmy assembled the most wonderful set of actors to play the main seven, and they all had great sort of track records, with the possible exception of Ian Lavender, Private Pike, who really, it was his first big success.
I said before that for me it was like going off to a summer school every year. Hey, hello, what are we going to learn from this lot?
Jimmy, on the first day of rehearsal of the very first episode, he was very nervous as the writer, or one of the writers, and came to me at lunchtime and said, what do you think about it? Well, you know, do you think it'll go? I said, I'm just fascinated by watching these people, which I was, because they were almost a team very early on.
No, I don't think any actor going into a series would expect it to go on for 9 years. We were lucky if we'd gone on for 1 year, or even 12 episodes. We'd have been happy because we liked getting paid on Fridays.
I think we all knew we were doing a successful series at the time, but because it was doing well in the ratings and everybody was talking about it. But I don't think any of us dreamt that 20, 30 years on, it would still be as popular as ever and attracting a whole new audience right across the age range.
I think audiences got to love them because they got to know all these people, and they like watching this funny old family.
Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler, if you think we're on the run?
Dear Bud came along to the old Riverside studios at Hammersmith. He recorded it and took about a couple of hours. He said goodbye and he walked back up the passage. And that was the last time we ever saw him, and about 3 or 4 months later he died. But everybody thinks it's an old wartime song.
Mr. Brown goes off to town on the A21, but he comes home each evening and he's ready with with his gun. So watch out, Mr. Hitler, you have met your match in us. If you think you can crush us, we're afraid you've missed the bus. 'Cause
it gave me such a thrill that I was listening that day at that recording to my hero singing something that I'd written.